Welcome, everybody, to Gospel Talks Podcast, where we help Christians all over the world become more effective in relational evangelism and discipleship. Jeff Musgrave is here with me today, author and founder of The Exchange, and I'm George Binoca, outreach pastor, former missionary to East Africa, and we're your hosts. We take questions about relationships, evangelism, and discipleship and give you biblical, practical answers. This is episode number 20. Yes, we've kind of gotten to the 20s now. Thank you so much for listening, guys, subscribing, supporting us. We get anecdotal, feedback all the time. This is really helping me. And that's what we want to do. We want to help you. So if you have ideas even about, it would be helpful if you guys talked about this topic. It'd be helpful if you guys shared more verses, or it'd be helpful if, I don't know, whatever ideas you have, we are all ears. We want to listen. We want you guys to give us your feedback, tell us how we can make it as helpful as possible for you. And we're working on ways to expand this podcast. And so we've got some really cool things around the corner in the future. And I'm really, really excited about that. Well, let's go ahead and jump into our topic for today. And the topic is this: good questions versus wrong assumptions. And if you've spent any time working with people and trying to, give them the gospel, share with them Christ, you know that assumptions can kill a relationship like nobody's business.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, the whole concept of good questions, because when we think about evangelism, we actually think more about our responsibility to talk than we do about our responsibility to listen.
That's good.
And the very fact that we're asking questions says that there's a lot of listening going on there.
Yeah. I mean, one of the quotes that stuck out to me, and I don't see it in our show notes for today, but I still remember it from the seminar I attended, is that quote from Dale Carnegie about how you can grow your followership multiple, compounded times faster than you could by speaking and expecting people to listen to you.
So I think this is the way it went. You can get more people interested in you in 2 weeks by becoming a good listener than you can in 2 years by being a good speaker.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, man, there you go. See, this is why we invite the guy who does the seminars.
No, that's Dale Carnegie. That's not me.
Yeah, I know. But I can't even get the quote right. I botched the quote itself. But that was one of my. By the way, that was one of my favorite segments of when you taught through Giving the Exchange. Which, by the way, you can get the book on our website without even attending a seminar or buying our online
just
course.
Just happen to have a copy of it.
Oh, wow. Is that, did we choreograph this? Yeah. It's very corny. Sorry, guys. Yeah. No, well, tell us about Giving the Exchange. I mean, this was my favorite part of your seminar when you were speaking to that church in Colorado, was this part of listening. Because I think it's a superpower if you can get it down.
So if you're interested, that's chapter 4 of Giving the Exchange. Giving the Exchange is a 12-lesson course on evangelism and discipleship. It's broken down into 3 sections. The first section deals with the relational concepts of both the importance and the biblical nature of relationships, and it's just some very, very practical. How do we get close to people? Where do we find people to be able to build relationships with? Those sorts of things. The second section of the book is how do I articulate the gospel in a one-time gospel conversation. So we have the Exchange Bible study that is a 4-lesson Bible study, but then we also want people to be able to articulate the gospel in a one-time conversation.
Right.
And so the second half of that book second section of that book deals with that. The third section of the book are really just teaching tools. So there are lesson plans, assignment sheets. There's actually tests and quizzes. So you could, as a pastor, purchase this book and use it as a textbook to be able to teach a course in your church. Or you could buy this as an individual and just say, these are the things that I want to learn. And the things we're talking about today came from chapter 4 in Giving the Exchange.
Yeah, listening I'm not the best at it, but I know this, it's made a huge impact on my ministry. And so a resource like that, like Giving the Exchange, if you bought it just for that section on listening, it's worth its weight in gold. I mean, I'm not exaggerating. It's not my bias. It's not because Pastor Jeff is sitting here with me. I'm just telling you guys, you go to exchangemessage.org, you go to store, you buy Giving the Exchange. It's basically a philosophy of evangelism and a practical training tool of evangelism. It's I mean, it's a great book. Even if you just read it as a book on its own, it's a great book.
It's actually, the title of that particular chapter is The Art of Compelling Conversations.
Right.
And the word compelling conversation is not trying to aim at being able to convince people of something. All we're really talking about is how do you have a conversation in which the other person enjoys that conversation? They want to repeat it. They want to spend time with you. And I have actually found that the art of compelling conversation is one of the most powerful bridges that get us into gospel conversations. In Acts chapter 11, in the first church plant outside of Jesus' influence, so this is in the city of Antioch, it says that there were Grecians who went into Antioch and they began to have conversations with other Grecians. And then in the context of those conversations, they preached unto them, and the word there is euangelizo, evangelized them,
right?
And many of them trusted Christ as Savior. And so it was the tool of just simply finding things they had in common with and getting connected with people through conversations that gave them a bridge into that gospel conversation.
Yeah, which Paul talking about, I'm all things to all men. It means, find what they're interested in and then find an overlap in your life that connects back to something you find something that you both can talk about with genuine interest.
We love calling that just common interest, just finding common interest.
Yes. Yeah, and by the way, there's no better way to win a friend or win somebody to become a friend than just taking an interest, a genuine interest in them and being genuinely fascinated with their life and their story.
I actually love the thought of having kind of a sanctified curiosity.
Yeah.
That we just live our lives really genuinely curious and interested in people. I mean, there's really not a single person in this world that you can't enjoy getting to know them.
Right.
Everybody's fascinating. Even the people who are curmudgeons, there's something that made them that way that's fascinating.
Yes.
And so if we would just live with that thought process of being interested in and caring about all the individuals in our life, change everything.
Oh, yeah. We were at that exchange seminar with you in Colorado, and I met a guy that basically watches cows, that sounds weird. He watches on a worldwide scale the cow market, the beef market, and that specific commodity, and writes authoritative articles on it all day long that are read by government officials and politicians and business owners. Then I met another guy who's like semi-pro hockey, plays for like some big university in Denver. And you meet these people around you. Like at first, like this guy just sits next to you. You don't know anything about him. It doesn't look quite interesting. But all of a sudden you start digging into his story and you're like, dude, like you're really cool. Like, wow, how fascinating is your life? And so having that interest in wanting to sit down and kind of, I don't know, you don't want to pretend to be a reporter. That sounds like a little too forced, but really just going about life, looking, who can I meet? Who can I know?
Well, here's what I know about those two people that I met one of them. I know who you're talking about, but both of them like George Badoka. And the reason I say that is not because you're such a likable guy, but because you took an interest in them. You took time to ask questions about them, and they're going to walk away saying, man, that guy is such a nice guy.
Right.
And all you did was ask questions and listen.
Right. How powerful is that? Your ears, that's why God gave you two. Yeah.
So, in fact, if I were going to sum up 2 skills that every single human in this earth can learn.
Yeah.
So we're not talking about, this guy is really good at it and this guy's not good at it. I think sometimes we feel like I can't really do evangelism because that's just not my thing. I'm not good at that. These are 2 skills that every single human can develop.
Yeah.
And they will make us more compelling as a conversationalist. And the first skill is learning to ask good questions.
Okay.
And the second skill is learning to be a good listener. Those 2 go hand in hand.
Right.
And when we learn those 2 skills, it will change everything in regards to conversations.
Right. Like right now, us doing this podcast, if I don't look at the show notes too often, like I might look at it for 10% of the episode, but I'm actually just sitting here thinking about what you're saying and just asking questions that come to mind because I feel like that's what the audience want to know. That's exactly what you're trying to do in every conversation in life, right? I mean, that's what people want, is just to be genuinely listened to, and then you ask questions that show that you were listening and interested in trying to understand more.
Yeah, in fact, that's a very one of the questions that you can do that will be very powerful is asking follow-up questions. So that's what you do on these podcasts is you ask follow-up questions to things that I say. What ends up happening is you end up taking me deeper than I maybe even thought about going.
Right.
And that will happen in every conversation you have.
Right.
So our goal in conversation is to take each conversation deeper. Get that person to begin to express their soul needs. And sometimes they don't even know them until you start becoming their friend and asking them questions, and they begin to open their hearts to us and then begin to show them how Jesus can meet those needs. That's that bridge that gets us into the gospel. And that skill that you just talked about of asking follow-up questions is one of the most powerful skills of learning how to take conversations deeper.
Yeah, and I know like this is not the focus of the episode today, but even physically, without even asking a question, you can express that you're following along, like moving your head like I'm doing right now for those of you that are watching the YouTube video, and just like these little kind of like you'll hear me speak it into the mic if you're in the audience, yeah, that's right. It's just a verbal it's not even asking a question, but it's like, I'm tracking with you.
Yeah, and those are those listening skills.
Right.
So we're going to focus today primarily on questioning skills.
Right.
But frankly, if you don't have the listening skills to go with it, it's not going to do you a whole lot of good. Right. And that nonverbal communication of I'm with you, I'm listening, this is impacting me.
Right.
Ooh, that kind of touched my heart. I mean, you can do all of that stuff just with your face.
Yeah. So, are there bad questions?
Yeah, there really are.
Because my teacher told me in school there are no bad questions.
Well, when it comes to conversations, you can actually kill a conversation by asking the wrong kind of questions. So if you ask a question that can be answered with a single syllable, and that person says, yeah, then it's like, okay, I got to race and find another question, and then they say, nah. And you literally are killing the conversation by asking these questions that they can answer with just one syllable, and so those are not good. What we want to do is we want to learn to ask open-ended questions that help us to get to know that person. I mean, literally, what we want is that they begin to reveal themselves to us. And so if we just ask questions because we've been told to ask questions,
right.
And they're answering yes, no, it's going to take a long, long time to figure that person out.
So an open-ended question is one you can't answer with just yes or no? You
have to actually tell me something about the situation or yourself in the question that I just asked.
Can you do a closed-ended question real quick and then show me what an open-ended question is?
So are you new to the area? Yep. You like it here? Nope. I just killed that conversation. Two things happened. They answered with one syllable, and the conversation went really negative really quick.
Right.
So instead of asking, are you new to the area? So how long have you lived here? So now they're giving me information about themselves.
Yeah.
Where are you from?
Yes.
These are the kind of questions. Now they're giving me information about them, and it's not a single syllable. And then I can take it a little deeper. I mean, that's really the process here. We're going to take conversations a little deeper, and we're going to ask a question. What have you found about this area so far that you like? And so now when they answer this question, they have to describe what it is they found and why they like it. And not only am I learning about the place,
right,
I'm learning about them because I know what it is they like, what they don't
tastes?
like.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. So, by the way, is there any strategies you have to avoiding, I don't know, questions that are too personal? I guess that's probably a common sense thing of sometimes in conversations, a conversation can get pretty weird.
So I think anytime we take a conversation too serious, too fast, it's going to get weird.
Okay.
So I've asked people some very personal questions in their lives. But it's only until I've gotten down far enough to where they want to talk to me about that. Okay. Does that make sense? So there are no subjects that are too personal if we're building a relationship. But if we take a conversation that we just started with someone and when we jump to one of these questions that are way too intimate, it is going to get weird really quick. So we want to I like to think of it as a downward spiral. That we're going to start shallow, but we're going to go away from this surface and eventually go down to this soul level. But it's not a jump. It's a spiral downward.
So how do you know when you're there, when you're at a point where you can start? Because I don't know, in fundamentalism, I think like somebody said, it feels like sometimes in fundamentalism in those circles, like somebody said, be different, and what people heard is be weird. So like the person in the drive-through, it's not that you can't hand a tract to them, but some people take it upon themselves to say, hey, read this tract or you're going to go to hell. Well, you've known that person for like 2 seconds and you just told them like they're going to hell.
Well, there was your wrong assumption.
Right.
So you have to ask those good questions to be able to help them see where they are.
Well, and even if they are, okay, even if they're not a believer, you just went 5 levels deep without giving the time. And that's what you've just advocated for, right? Give that time. Let's go deep. Let's get there gradually. Let's get to know them. But then how do you know when you're there, when you can you can legitimately ask those questions of like, have you ever thought about what happens when you die?
Yeah. My thought process is that when a person begins to open their heart to me, when I begin to see them trusting me enough, and I think trust is a really key word. It's hard for me to imagine someone being led to the Lord by someone they don't trust. So I actually think trust is a really important thing, and it helps us to be able to gauge trust by how much they're willing to tell me about themselves. So when they're telling me I work at such and such a place, they've given me information about themselves, but they really haven't told me about who they are. But when they start telling me about who they are and the problems they're facing and the fears that they're having, then I know these people are beginning to open their heart to me. They're open their soul to me. So I kind of love these, and you've heard me talk about these before, soul needs. And we'll talk about that again in the future sometime. But when a person begins to show me their soul needs, it begins to let me know, this is an opening for me to go deeper, and then begin to ask those key questions that are going to actually turn the conversation to the gospel.
Basically, knowing what these are means you don't have to guess as to the timing of when to turn that conversation. These are the markers of, all right, we're ready.
Yeah, I think so. I think that when you get there, you're going to know you're there. And so I think that some people have to be told, don't push it. Let the conversation take you there. So the way we let the conversation take us there is just by keep asking those follow-up questions about them, not about what we want to talk about. We're wanting to talk about what they want to talk about, because I guarantee you they're going to. We're talking about compelling conversations. Right. They're going to enjoy that conversation more when we focus our attention on them and who they are.
Right. Right. Well, that's wonderful. I mean, we've just gotten from surface to soul, and we're talking about the soul needs and what those 5 soul needs are. And there's several other things to talk about now. Now we're probably at that point where probably the next episode we should do is, okay, now how do you turn the conversation? But just so you guys know, I mean, this is all in Giving the Exchange. You can go to exchangemessage.org to the store and grab this material. And it has given me a lot of confidence and peace going into these conversations with unbelievers, because I don't feel this pressing need to go ahead and blurt out the gospel really quick and then run away from the conversation.
Yeah, we call that pouncing on someone.
Right.
And you can give the gospel that way, but I question how effective it's going to be.
Right.
When that person begins to open their heart to me and they begin to actually seek what we've shown them, it kind of works off of last week's episode where we've been showing them and they are now asking questions about what it is that's going on there.
Right.
Then when we give them the gospel, it's going to be powerful and it's going to be effective in their life.
And something else for you guys to know is that is also different from, okay, there's a place for divine appointments where you can go from surface to soul needs really quick, because you're in a divine appointment. They show up in the lobby of your church ready to hear the gospel.
Yeah, and frankly, that can happen on an airplane as well. It's happened to me on an airplane.
That's right.
So those divine appointments are all over the place. And again, you're going to know when you get there because God is making it obvious to us. In fact, I like to pray this prayer: Lord, show me who you want me to talk to, and make it obvious because I'm a little dense.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and here's my last rebuttal against the whole thing of, we need to just put a track in somebody's face and quickly get out the gospel, tell them they're going to hell, show them a need. And then I'm not saying that there isn't any place for that in ministry. No, I think there are places where open air preaching is still effective. I've seen it on the mission field. I can do that on the streets of Nairobi, is go hand tracks out and be pretty effective. However, in the Middle East, open air preaching, no one would even think to do it. No one can do it. It's illegal. You'd most likely die doing it. But I'll tell you, there are thousands of people coming to Christ in places like Iran, Iraq, Syria. There are people coming to Christ in the Middle East all the time, and that approach is not even an option on the table.
Yeah.
How are they coming to Christ?
Yeah.
It's through relationships. There's no radio programs. The podcasts are not allowed. The connection to the internet is restricted so that this kind of material doesn't reach places like that.
Yeah, one of the things that I would love for us and our listeners here to be able to see is that we may not be in the Middle East where we are in that kind of a closed environment.
Right. But
our culture here is making dictates on us as well.
It is.
And if we go outside of that cultural respect, we're going to pay the consequence in terms of not being effective.
Yeah.
So I love to think of it this way. We want to be intentional.
Yeah.
This is not about, let's see if we can just get it done here and there through friendships. We want to be intentional. We want to take the gospel to people, but we also want to be strategic in how we get it done so that we are effective. And that's exactly what you're talking about.
Yes.
You can do it on the street corner in the Middle East, but you won't do it very long there.
No, you will not. You will not.
And so, if you strategically say, "I'm gonna get to know people, and I'm going to take the gospel to individuals," you're going to be much more effective.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. Well, that brings this episode to a close, and thank you guys for listening. Thank you for subscribing, and I just pray that you be praying with us to the Lord of the harvest, that he would send forth laborers. If you liked the podcast, if it was helpful to you, share it with a friend, tell somebody about it. We love you guys. We're praying for you, and we'll see you next week.